So far we have used constant light to discuss the properties of light because it's easier to see as we're moving something that's always on. The problem is constant light is not as flexible as strobe light. Strobe light is far more powerful, and as a result, I have a greater deal of flexibility in regards to light contrast and challenging lighting scenarios, including when I'm dealing with sunlight. Sunlight is very powerful, and if I were to try and bring a constant light outside into the sun, the chances that that constant light would do anything to my scene is very slim. I'd have to move the light so close to my subject it wouldn't really do anything. And so we are going to actually, in practice, use strobe light in order to do the lighting that we're going to do. And that works because we are taking pictures, we are not doing movies. Movies have to use constant light, and so their lighting equipment is typically much more expensive, huge power-sucking, generator-running types of lights for movie scenes. All right. We have, as far as studio light setups, two different studio-only setups, which means that they do not have battery power packs to be taken outside. They have to be plugged in order to run. Three of them, yes. 1, 2, 3. We have 3 of those. We have 3 strobe setups that are battery powered, 2 of which can be either plugged in or battery powered, 1 of which can only be battery powered. The most portable strobe setup that we have is this one. This is the case. The strobes that you would use with that case are here. So these are the sides of the strobes. They're just common flashes. You could actually run these on camera if you wanted to. But if I wanted a 2-light setup, I would simply borrow these 2 strobes plus a remote for the strobes, stick them inside this bag, and I have a portable studio setup. Okay. I want to show you what's in this bag so you guys can kind of see what's in it. You have 2 portable beauty dishes. Beauty dishes are sort of small soft boxes. You have 2 light stands, which I'll get into how to use the light stands in a moment. Apparently this one has a broken piece already. It has these flash attachments through which we stick the flash on.
Can you put those on the camera?
What?
These?
Yes.
Like,
I hate on-camera flash, so generally speaking I do not use them on camera. If I use on-camera flash, it's typically aimed either up like this to bounce off the ceiling so it illuminates the subject from the top, or it's aimed like, come on, cooperate, or it's aimed sideways to bounce off a wall so I can create a 45-degree angle light. I rarely ever point my flash directly at my subject because it just blasts them with light, eliminates all of their features, and then creates a dark shadow behind them, which is not what I like.
That's like the paparazzi.
Yeah. So this is a paparazzi light. Okay, so if I'm using this, I would simply attach the light to here, lock it down so it stays in place, figure out how to lock this down, and then I would attach this to it, which allows me to then attach my softbox to it. So this little ring is what I attach the softboxes to. This little stand is what I attach to the strobe stands. Okay, so item number 1 for discussion, setting up a tripod correctly. Always expand the legs as wide as they will go. Okay, so for this tripod stand, that means that these little supports are going to be horizontal to the ground. Okay, I will then lock it down in place so that they are as wide as they will go. And the reason that we push them as wide as they will go is that if you don't, I promise you, even with them being as wide as they will go, I promise you somebody is going to walk by and kick it and knock it over. Even though I know this myself, I still kick and knock over strobe stands. So we have to be very careful. In fact, when working in the studio, I recommend using the sandbags to weight the studio stands down even more so you're not knocking over my expensive strobes. Alright, so make the strobe stand as wide of a base as you possibly can so it does not get knocked over as people are moving around your set and you are trying to work with your talent and you're trying to get this set up. So this strobe is almost all set up. The last thing I need to do is attach my beauty dish. Here's the beauty dish. These particular beauty dishes, okay, there's a ring in the center. I'm simply going to push it until it goes all the way to the back. It then has these clips in the back that fit around this ring. One of the clips actually slides to allow for you to attach it. So I'm going to slide it on, then pull that piece down, and then try to make sure it slides all the way on. I think I missed one of the little clips. Here we go. There we go. Okay. So that's on. It also has a little screw up here to allow it to tighten down so it doesn't rotate. I don't think tightening that thing down is necessary. I wouldn't unscrew it all the way. I have students who have a tendency to unscrew it all the way, and that creates problems. But please make sure you understand lefty loosey, righty tighty, and you are not unscrewing things so much that the screw actually detaches from the equipment itself. All right, that should be locked in. Okay, so that's the reflector for this, and there should be a diffuser for the front. Diffusers are attached using Velcro, or this particular one, yeah, Velcro to the outside. So if I find the Velcro strip, attach it there, it goes along the outside of the box.
How much does that setup cost?
This is the least expensive one, because you actually have to buy the strobes separately.
Oh yeah. Oh.
So this is now ready to go, and I can fire it when it's ready. There we go. Okay. So before I move on, so I said this was the smallest, lightest, easy to carry, easy The question for you guys is this: why do I need to shoot in manual with this? Why do I need to shoot in manual?
These are flat.
Okay. Yes. But why does that matter?
Because we need to adjust to the light right there.
Yes. Also a correct answer. So what is my camera doing if it's in auto when I... Okay. So my camera is taking a light reading from this light, not this light, because this light's not on, right? This light's not firing, and it only fires for a brief second. Boom. Not very long. And we don't have handheld light meters to fire off and say, that's the correct light reading. And so we have to use manual exposure on our cameras to try and get it correct. Now, if you remember, I said when you look at your camera, they had an X next to one of the numbers. That meant the shutter speed couldn't go above that, right? So then we set that at 180. We could certainly go less, but 180 was what we were kind of stuck at, except for maybe the XT4 went to 250. Then we set our ISO at what? 400. Okay, and we're avoiding high ISOs because we're trying to keep the quality of the image high and avoiding image noise in our photographs. The way that we are going to control lightness or darkness in our photographs is not by decreasing the amount of light, really. It's going to be by adjusting our settings so that the exposure is what we want. That's going to increase or decrease the darkness of our photographs. We will decrease the amount of light to make it lighter or darker, but only in relationship to our base level settings, which is shutter speed 180, ISO 400, and then adjust from there. I'm not like going into a really dark room with so little light that my ISO is jumping up to like 3200. That's not what we want. Okay? All right, so that means that my aperture is the primary way that I am controlling exposure. And aperture and ISO can be your two ways of controlling exposure. Shutter speed is not going to be able to control exposure. Could you tell me why? Why is shutter speed, like, I can make it slower, so I can try to make it quote unquote brighter by slowing down my shutter speed. Why will that have zero effect on my exposure? I mean, it won't have zero effect, but. What is shutter speed based on?
Like the closing and opening of your aperture.
What's that?
It's like how fast the aperture like closes and opens up.
Okay, it's how fast the shutter speed opens and closes. Shutter speed is based on time, right? And the way that it increases your exposure is by staying open longer to let more light in, right? Imagine I just made my shutter speed stay open longer to let more light in.
It's not going to catch all light.
How long is that light source on? The strobe is also based on time. So if I try to let more light in, there is no more light coming in because the strobe does not keep firing, it just fires for a split second. So shutter speed is not going to have any effect on what your strobe looks like. Zero. The only thing shutter speed is going to have an effect on is what your ambient light looks like. Ambient light is this light, right? So if I slow my shutter speed down so much that I start to see this light, then yes, it will have an effect on exposure. But if my shutter speed is fast enough that I can't see this light, then it has no effect on exposure. Okay? Because this is time-based and shutter speed is time-based, shutter speed has no effect on what the strobe looks like. Okay, so that means I have to control aperture and ISO only, and the brightness of my light. Okay, so here is one lighting setup. This comes with a maximum of 2 stands and 2 flashes. And 2 softboxes. Sorry. So if I want a 3-light setup, here's the next question. If I only have 2 strobes and I want a 3-light setup, how can I get a 3-light setup with 2 strobes? What's that?
The sun.
Okay, so the sun can act as my 3rd light, right? If I'm shooting outside, the sun can act as your 3rd light source. So if I wanted to shoot, and this is where I use strobes a lot when I'm working with sun. The sun, typically when the sun is setting, I love the colors in the sky. So I like having the sunset as the colors of my background. But if I'm shooting towards the colors of the sunset, where the sun is, my subject is backlit, meaning that I'm getting a silhouette, right? So instead of getting a silhouette and I want to see them, then I'll set up strobes so I can see them because I'm illuminating them from the front with the strobes. So then the sun acts as a rim light. The strobes act as key and fill lights. We got it? Okay, there's another way that I can work with 2 strobes. A reflector, excellent. All right, so a reflector acts as that 3rd light source. Typically the way that I would work with a reflector is as fill light, because the reflector decreases the quantity of light typically, because I'm not sticking a mirror behind somebody to try and reflect the light. A mirror is perfectly reflective. I'll get 99 to 100% of the light that I'm putting into it back at the source. So I could theoretically hold up a mirror and it'll reflect the same amount of light back at the source. Anything that's not perfectly mirror reflective is going to reflect less light back, and it's going to diffuse it more, right? Diffusion happens because the light rays that were traveling straight at your subject are now bouncing all over the place, and that's what diffusion is. Rather than having straightforward light rays, we're having bouncing around light rays. Okay. So this is the 2nd most portable strobe setup. It's a backpack. These ones are a little bit more powerful, more expensive. This is the Westcott Studio strobes. If you decide you like working with this setup, which should have 3 strobes in it. JP, do you remember if this has 3 total strobes in it or not? There's 2 in here? Okay, never mind. That's a 2 strobe setup. There is another box of Westcott strobes that has 3 strobes in it. Apparently that's not the one. Okay, so this has 2 strobes in it. These strobes are battery powered. They're much bigger, much stronger. You have a lot more control over the light. These batteries are much bigger too, which means they could last longer running at full power. What this bag does not have in it is soft boxes. So you're working with relatively hard light, unless you put the light really close. Remember, it softens as it gets closer. Okay? So I could check out soft boxes with it. It will have some attachments that we can put soft boxes on it. And it doesn't come with these. So these are the light stands for this particular lighting setup. The tripods are a little bit different. So lighting setup number 1 is a set of standard flashes that are small, kind of pointed light. Again, we move it down so that these supports are straight across. We make sure these are locked, and we set this up. These stands are a lot stronger and a lot sturdier. They have to be because these strobes are a lot bigger and weigh more. there's that. Turn the power on, and we're off. Okay, each setup should have its own remote. Please be very careful not to mix the remotes. Each remote is transmitting on a specific channel. Oh, it's gonna break it, okay. Each remote is transmitting on a specific channel. This remote talks to this strobe, or these two strobes. If I accidentally get this remote mixed up with this remote, I'm going to be sitting here getting confused why the remote's not firing my strobes, and today we may be sitting here and you'll be like firing and somebody's strobes in the back are firing and yours are not. So you start messing with each other. Okay? So these remotes allow you to fire off-camera flash, which allows me to set this strobe up at a 45-degree angle, which we said was the most flattering angle at which to set a light source, right? And then fire it remotely, and I can move farther away, I can move closer, and these strobes get to move independently of me, the photographer. All right. So that's that one. Okay, these larger boxes, one of them is Westcott because I spent a bunch of money on this one. These are the more expensive ones. Two of them are Godox, which are the less expensive ones. They function essentially the same, but inside the giant box is at least two strobes. So apparently that's this strobe here. They come in a box like this. The battery, the power cord, and everything should be in there. The remote, which should be in here. Tripod stands, which are here, and some larger soft boxes. So the larger carry case allows for larger soft boxes. These soft boxes are meant to be attached to specific attachments, which, JP, would you mind going to the back and finding me one of the softbox attachments? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So just like the other one, it has this little ring that's meant to attach to another ring and get locked down. The interior of it, again, has that umbrella fitting. Then this gets attached to the strobe. Okay. So what we are going to do with the rest of the period is what I want you to do is set up a 3-light setup with the different strobe boxes in the room. I'd recommend no more than 3 to a lighting setup. Set it up, try to get the lighting set up, see if you can take a picture on manual using one of the cameras, break it back down, put everything away, and then if there's time, I'm going to have you rotate to a different lighting setup. Does that make sense? So we'll have groups of 3. There we go. So this is the attachment here, if I can get it out. This is the attachment here, so this is what replaces the reflector. Take the reflector off. This is called a Bowen's mount, the 3 little notches that are in there. These 3 little notches get put back in. On these strobes, it's relatively safe because they've protected the strobe. Remember I told you your finger oils can cause the light to explode? Yeah. They've protected the strobe light from your fingers by putting this glass rim around it. So I just accidentally touched that. You don't want to be touching it a ton anyway because it still gets very hot here. But I'm relatively safe because the strobe light's actually inside. It's that ring tube. When I turn this on, which it is on, I have the ability to turn on an interior LED light, which they call a modeling light. The modeling light is just to look where the shadows are falling on the person's face. Has nothing to do with what the actual light's going to look like. It's not going to be the same color of light. It's not going to be the same intensity of light. It's not going to be the same anything of light. It just shows you where the shadows are falling on the person's face. So currently the modeling light is not on, but if I looked at the remote, I could turn the modeling light on there. We got it? So get in groups of 3, go claim a box of strobes somewhere in the room. I've got 2 in the back, 1 on the side over there, and a couple up here.